So, so this is Misery Transmission, a collaborative reading event between Misery Tourism and the Lurking Transmission. So this is fun. We've been doing a whole bunch of these collab readings this year, and every one of them has been fantastic. Every one of them has been awesome. We have six, I think, really talented readers up tonight, and some of you tweeted out a little sneak peek of what you were going to read, and a lot of it sounds really salacious and really amazing and really wild. So I'm looking forward to it. So just first up tonight, I want to apologize. My voice is slightly fucked. I have a little bit of laryngitis or something, but we're going to power through. And yeah, I just welcome to everyone from the Lurking Transmission crew. And
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Evan is up first.
Thank you.
Hey, Evan.
Hey, William. My name is Evan Dean Shelton. I'm a writer and podcaster and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to read you the opening chapter from a book I'm releasing real soon called Church Burner. Uh, but before I read you this, let me plug my horror con, which is the weekend of October 13th, 14th. It's in West Virginia and Huntington. It's called Void Con. It's not going to be like any other horror con you've ever been to. There's not going to be anybody selling Cthulhu plushies or any fucking bullshit like that. It's going to be something different.
You have a
Thank you for
link? Do you have
listening.
a link? If you drop it in the chat, Rudy will tweet it out
Ooh, I am
in the
not
thread
savvy
for the
enough
reading.
to do that, but Justin, I feel like Justin has the skills to make this happen.
Hey, awesome,
Thank you.
awesome.
So am I good to go?
You are
Okay,
good to
cool.
go.
Thank you, sir. Again, this is the opening chapter from a book I'm about to release called Church Burner. It is a novella. The little room smelled like old books and cigarette smoke and felt like at least three kinds of fear. The old man was on his ass on the floor, looking up at Kim and Jay while Jay rummaged through the desk. The old man wasn't paying attention to the gun. He was looking right past it at what little of Kim's face he could see over the bandana and under the hood. There ain't no money in there, the old man said. His weathered brown face was bunched up in worry, swelling on one side from where Kim had knocked him good with the pistol. Ain't looking for money, preacher man, Kim said. Jay pulled an old cigar box out of a drawer and put it on top of the desk next to his 357. He flipped open the lid, looked inside for about 2 seconds, then picked up his revolver and used it to flip the lid closed again. Something dark washed over the narrow band of his pale face that was visible between bandana and hood. The old man shifted on the floor and took a hard look at the door to the little room. It stood ajar, and down a short hallway past rows of old pine pews, he could see Jesus on the cross. Jesus was so far away, the old man couldn't tell if Jesus' eyes were on him or not. Then again, they always were, right? What is it? Kim asked Jay. For a while, Jay said nothing. Then, after what felt like a black oceanic forever, one word: pictures. Kim took a deep breath and stepped away from the preacher, then leveled her 9mm at his head. Nah, let that motherfucker burn, Jay said. Kim's brown eyes flashed red and her arm shook from shoulder to wrist. She looked volcanic and goddamn dangerous. The old man looked up at her from the floor, still ignoring the gun. You gonna burn me? He asked. I'm gonna do worse than that, motherfucker, Kim screamed and hit the old man across the face with her pistol again. A piece of the old man's face tore off and hit the wall with a tiny splat. Kim dropped the gun and pounced on him. Jay stepped around the desk and grabbed Kim by her arms, dragging her back from the preacher. Kim popped up from the floor and spun around on Jay, nailing him in the chest with both of her open palms and all her weight. Jay keeled over backward into the wall and stayed there, putting his hands up in a boxer's defense. Keep your goddamn hands off me, Jay, Kim said. Jay didn't respond. There was only one response possible for him, and he left it at that. The preacher was crying now, curled up on the floor and cradling the ruin of his face. Y'all gonna kill me? Burn me up? You walking with this devil, this white devil? He moaned. Kim stepped over and kicked the old man hard in the back. He yowled and rolled over to look up at her, instinctively curled up like a baby. Kim crouched over him, drawing in close over his bleeding face. I knew your old ass was stupid. You done a lot of stupid, nasty ass shit. but I ain't realized you can't even count. What? The old man said. I said your old ass must not be able to count because there's more than one devil in this room, motherfucker. Kim stood up and looked at Jay with a flat glare. Jay stepped out into the hallway and came back in with a gas can. Kim took the gas can from Jay and poured it on the old man. The old man moved surprisingly quick, rolling over and making a mad scramble towards Kim's legs. Jay stepped forward and kicked the preacher in his shoulder, spinning him around and away from Kim to land on his back, where his moaning was choked off by the gasoline that Kim poured straight down his throat. When Kim had nearly emptied the can, she slung what was left all over the tiny office. A generous heaping of gasoline splashed across the preacher's family Bible where it stood on the top shelf. It was a 160-year-old tome given to Reverend Tompkins' great-great-grandfather by the man who had owned him. A dedication on the inside cover read, "To our dear and invaluable George, may the light of the Lord and Savior be upon him for all his days. Ah, how quaint is the love of a captor for its captive." Please, please, the preacher begged through gasps of air. Beg God, please. Ask that motherfucker and see what happens. Did any of them beg? Kim pointed at the cigar box on the desktop. The preacher just kept crying. Did my sister beg? Kim asked. It don't matter, Kim. Don't matter if she begged. That don't mean anything. Anybody would, Jay started. All right, Kim interrupted. All right. That ain't important. But I do want you to beg God. You better pray your ass off, because I ain't never seen nobody pray so hard they could put fire out. Please, I got some money under the desk. Please, the preacher begged. Jay grinned at Kim and started feeling around under the desk until he found a gallon Ziploc bag with stacks of cash inside, duct taped to the underside of the desk. He tore it free, took a quick look at the contents, and stuffed it in his dirty, faded jacket. Thanks for the money, dumbass. Die slow. If there's a hell, tell them the Lupercalians sent you. Tell them you fucked with the wrong goddamn ones, Kim said. Kim looked at Jay, and Jay nodded, and then the two of them walked out of the little office, down the short hallway and out of the church. On the front steps, Jay lit a match and dropped it just inside the front door, where the gasoline-soaked carpet birthed fire from its faded red fibers, fire that reached into the dark recesses of that old church like the serpentine tongue of a dragon. As Kim and Jay hustled over to the beat-up van parked in front of the church, they heard the preacher start screaming. The fire was already pouring out of the front door, belching flame into the night. Jay looked across the hood of the van at Kim. The fire was filling the pale corners of her dark eyes, and she looked ferocious, scary. It made Jay think of when they were kids. Kim with the scissors in her hands, blood everywhere, and that look in her eyes. The look of a wild thing in a corner. Most of the time, that look made him love her even more. But sometimes it made him wonder if one day she would let it loose on him too, then everybody else. Nights like those, he went to sleep thinking he might wake up with a knife in his neck, but he'd be fine if that happened. There were worse things. Kim saw the look on Jay's pale face as the fire washed over it and turned it orange. He looked cold in his ratty old jacket, the color of nothing. It was a cold night, but he looked frozen. She was scaring him again. She loved him. She didn't want to scare him, ever. But there were worse things. Jay opened the driver's door to the van. Kim took one last look at the church. The flames were reaching into the sky now, and it was starting to get loud. It sounded mad as hell, mean as fuck, like that shit Jay made them listen to in the van. The sound of the wood roaring and rattling and screaming into the night was music. You hear that, Jay? It's like that black metal bullshit you like so goddamn much. Jay tipped his head to the side and listened for a second. God damn, he said, and his mouth hung open. The hellacious roar washed over him, and he felt like his feet might come off the ground. From within the abrasive conflagration, Jay could hear something like a word or a name being scorched into the night, fumed from the throat of the living furnace. Zathane. Jay looked at Kim and saw that her eyes were wide open, and her hand was creeping into her jacket, where she kept her 9mm. She had heard the word, too. A voice from inside the van spoke up. It's gonna sound like the goddamn police soon, y'all dumb motherfuckers. Come on, let's go. Big J sounded scared. He didn't get scared much, but when he did, he couldn't hide it. Kim pulled her eyes away from the church and got into the van, slamming her door shut. Jay got in and turned the engine, and they got the fuck out of there. Put one of them tapes in, Jay, Kim said once they were on the highway. Jay dug around between the seats for a moment and pulled one of his many hand-labeled tapes off the pile, holding it up in the pale light filtering in through the van's windows. One word was written on the blank cover, Burzum. He put the tape in the deck and cranked the icy noise that came out of the speakers until his ears hurt just a little bit, and then he left the dial there. Kim smiled a little. Jay smiled more. He thought she'd never get into that shit. Thank you for listening.
Evan, that was awesome, man. That was fucking awesome. I
Thank you so
love
much.
how I love how rich a sense of place and atmosphere there is in this. And that's hard with pulp writing because this is fundamentally pulp writing. And pulp
Yeah,
writing needs to keep up a real pace. It needs to be propulsive. You can't slow down in a piece of pulp writing to just soak in the atmosphere and spend paragraphs and paragraphs like describing the world around the characters. So you have to be efficient with language, which you are. You have a real wonderful, efficient, propulsive use of language in this piece, but yet there's such a strong and distinct sense of exactly the world these characters occupy. You know, like your dialogue, the like Southern Gothic dialogue, like well, a little bit of Southern Gothic, a little bit of Elmore Leonard, right? That like
sure, yeah, sure.
gives a real sense of like you know exactly where this is happening, and also like when you do get descriptive you have a real efficiency with your description, so the reader or the listener gets a real sense of like this church. You have that wonderful moment where like he's almost making eye contact with Jesus on the cross, you know, and
Mhm.
you get a sense, you slowly like get a sense of the history of this preacher and the way that you unfurl all of that without ever losing that really rapid breakneck pacing is, I think, really fucking remarkable, man. It's a great piece of writing. I'm eager to read
Thank you
more of
so
it.
much. Thank you so much, man. That's like the
Yeah,
nicest thing
thank you,
anybody's
man.
ever said. All right. Thank you, man.
Fuck yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah, dude, that was awesome. I really like the fact that your thing is called Church Burner, and you started out right by ending the last or the first chapter with the Burzum CD.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck yeah,
Yeah.
dude. No,
Thanks,
that's
man.
just the
Thanks.
language of that is it's just really it flows together real good. And the part where they're like, you got the guy like, hold at gunpoint and shit, that's intense. I like there's a line in there, the invaluable, dear and invaluable, for the when he's reading the letter, there, my dear and invaluable, uh,
George, yeah,
George,
yeah.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
very good. Yeah, I like that. Awesome.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Evan. That was fucking awesome, man.
You're
Up
so welcome.
next, up next is Matthew Mitchell, and I just want to check with Rudy real quick. Are you recording, Rudy?
Oh yeah, I'm still recording.
Great, great, because
Yep.
my I'm getting a little bit of sketchiness on my end, so we
Okay.
may have to use your
I haven't seen any sketchy video or anything on my end, so hopefully, I don't know.
beautiful,
I'm on a laptop
beautiful.
that's pretty old, so we'll see what happens.
I mean, these videos are never like, 1080p perfect
No,
clarity,
yeah.
but I'm a little worried mine's going to be super low quality. Anyway, Matthew Mitchell is up next. Sorry about that, Matthew.
Oh, that's all right. Thanks for having us, William. Uh, I'm going to read y'all a chapter of Chain Devils, my unpublished novella. Um, this is chapter 11, titled The Sad Affair of Dandy Riggs. The pipe smith, Dandy Riggs he was called, had wanted to attend the trade fairs for almost as long as he had been a craftsman. The Branson Empire brought him on during the second year of service in their third company's horn line. A lucky break. Dandy was no good with the trumpet. He could bleed at the right pace, knew his notes well enough, but had not the passion nor temperance it took to blare a tune of war upon the battlefield. Dandy had in fact turned heel and ran in the face of the enemy on more than one occasion. He could not, he discovered, bring himself to accept destruction with a horn against his lips. But there were other skills in Dandy's repertoire: the ability to mold and repair broken bells, the eventual smoothness of previously boot-crushed borings, mouthpieces which he battered and scraped until they were whole again. Fortunately for Dandy, word of his prowess with the soldering gun got around to his superiors. Now, the Branson Empire, though not known for cruelty on the scale of Her Majesty of the Ozarks or the infidel Chief Commando Larson, still did not suffer the shortcomings of its servicemen. Infantry might be shuffled to kitchens upon reproach. Leaders could wind up churning ditches, be it a colonel with a drinking problem, hot dog of a rifleman, or a hornblower scared of his own shadow. The Branson Barons offered a simple choice when roles were reassigned: do the new or die today. Stood before the Council of Barons after his particularly poor performance at the failed Panther Creek skirmish, Dandy accepted his reassignment order to the Pipesmith workshop with great relief. There, he traded in his patchwork bugle for a tool bag as if it were bombs for blowjobs. He took the new and lived, had 4 years of bliss, 4 good years. When the Branson Empire met her end, Dandy Riggs was at the top of his game. A devout patron of the anti-bald knob clergy, proud inner-wall citizen, sacrifice taxes paid. He was made workshop lead the year prior. His predecessor had been obliterated by a heroic dose of Patriot spice, yes, but all agreed Dandy would have succeeded him regardless. The work was going well enough that he'd been invited to his first trade fair. Dreams had been dreamt and fulfilled faster than he could process. He even had his own pipe shop off Landon Memorial, packed to the gills with a dazzling array of screw chillums, light bulb bubblers, and handcrafted torches, all of which afforded him a healthy opium habit and a sturdy routine of fucking. Dandy shared a cottage near Taney Dam with the busty sheriff named Wellworth, who took him for a sex pet. The couple rented chubby mule boys and mercenaries twice a month, traveled together to visit a hive of slut knights that circled their war wagons on the border of the city. Dandy and the sheriff would gorge on anal discharge and humiliation, suffered the sweet, bloody release of as many lashings as they could afford before returning home, both of them sore-backed and in love. Yes, sir, Dandy Riggs had it made for a time. But time, she's the reaper, and Chief Commando Larson's guerrilla assault on Taney Dam put an end to all good things. One of few who survived the onslaught of automatic bolt bows, razored whips, and hacksaw gas attacks, Dandy crawled from the blood-clogged gutters of Branson with 6 lifetimes of tragedy and half his mind. Driven by the purest desire to be treated to anything but the kind of deaths he had witnessed, the pipesmith dragged himself beyond the burning wall. There, he made silent peace with the world beneath the body of a local brewer who had once sucked him off during border duty. Sleep came, went on for days, nothing everlasting. It was the slut knights who saved him, found him beneath the rotted corpse on a supply raid. A redemption short-lived once it was discovered Dandy had not escaped with his riches. Penniless as he was, Dandy had become worthless to familiar lust goddesses made living bringers of pain. Knowing what would become of him at the bejeweled hands of his would-be saviors, an endless sea of brutal intercourse, rushing tides of fatal orgasm, the further recession of coral barriers around his sea-beaten sanity, he pulled a crystal hash pipe from his trousers, cradled it in offerings, fine powders of supplication mashed high in the rim of its shimmering bowl, a pacifier to stave the oral hungers of this glamorous horde of half-nude battle whores. Mercy, he begged. In the ensuing years, Dandy Riggs traveled with the Slut Knight caravan. Hard times, fed little food or drug, fucked senseless at any given moment, sore nearly all the time. Not quite among them, never far from their grasp, always leashed. It wasn't all bad. In the iron gauntlets of his captors, Dandy created great works of art, crafted practical beauties befitting of the horde's lavish narcotic appetite, smoking apparatuses as totems of feminine will, pipes that whispered the soft warmth of inner thighs, sharpness of teeth. Dandy stoned his work with opal anal plugs, infused delicate etchings of inhuman ravagings along pipe shafts, embedded sensuous clove oil diffusers to secrete numbing warmth upon fleshy, sucking lips.
Beneath his captor's fiendish desire for aesthetic pleasure, he learned new skills and honed his craft. Obsession, the purest of desire, bloomed in him. He soon forgot his former life and settled into the splendors of art. Despite his bruised ballsack, Dandy Riggs positively flourished. The day the Slut Knight showed him the merchant tent, Dandy Riggs nearly fell to his knees to give thanks to an anti-bald knob god who no longer existed. He openly wept. Nothing seemed real, as if he'd been restored to his former glory, as if life against the grindstone had finally split the well of hope eternal. Two thuggish slaughter whores sandwiched him on the grass for his embarrassing display of emotion. The Slut Knights wriggled out his seed over and over until he was choking and recanted his joy. The caravan dropped him off at the trade fair the following morning. They dumped his goods beside the trail, said they would return for him and their profits, tore off again. Dandy set up tent alone, bow-legged and weak, beside a transitory group of meth cooks and pill pressers. Happiness returned, however slowly, as he placed his wares on the grass to glitter and glow by the light of a rising star. His neighbors, few early shoppers, early day travelers, all stopped to admire the work of Dandy Riggs. To be appraised by his peers once more, to have climbed the ranks of society, any society, even one so low as this collection of vagrant chemists, hawk-eyed opportunists, that was the finest of days, the highest high. Hey now, a heroin tester named Kelsey said to him. He took off his gas mask and pointed at the trail. This don't look too good. Dandy watched a vast multitude of men with chainsaws descend on the tents. Well, hell, he said, ain't that just the way? Thank you.
Holy shit, Matthew. That fucking rocked, man.
Dude.
I love the world building in this piece. You have created a universe like unlike any other. It's like a little bit of Samuel Delaney, a little bit of Mad Max, a little bit of Appalachia, and like a little bit of like medieval punk too. It's so fucking wild. And everything from like I love the way that you convey the location. You don't just say like, you're not just like, oh yeah, this is like in West Virginia somewhere. It's like the empire of, such and such a place. And like through familiarity with like Appalachian kind of like landmarks and stuff, you get a sense of, oh yeah, this is where this is happening. And so much of it is conveyed through like your constructed slang and through just incredibly indelible creative uses of language. And it's just so like marvelously textured and at the same time like so crude and so vicious and so funny. It's just really good stuff, Matthew, and the chat was absolutely going wild.
Yeah,
so you might want to check it out.
Yeah, I'm stoked to see like people hear that for the first time. You know what I mean? Because I've heard all this stuff like a few times. And it's like the Slut Knights are the coolest fucking fantasy characters.
So awesome.
And to see new people hear
so
that
good.
shit. And I could see everybody's eyes. Everybody's like, did that motherfucker say Slut Knights? Fucking awesome. So good.
Oh, very good. Very good stuff, man. So just quickly, if anyone has any friends right now in the waiting room, just let me know in the chat because we suddenly have a whole bunch of people sitting in the waiting room and I'm pretty sure like it's a bunch of trolls. So I'm not going to let anyone in I don't recognize, but if anyone ends up with a friend who's stranded there, just put their name in the chat and I will make sure they get let in.
Cool. I hate to fucking do this, but I'm over at my probably future in-laws' place, and they just got done with dinner, and I like have to go. But I thank you so much for having us on here.
No, thank you for joining us, and and thank you so much. You read an awesome piece, and if I will
This guy's a James.
Oh,
see, this
sweet,
is,
trolls.
This is exactly
Oh, no.
what I thought was about.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Oh no! Certainly,
Oh,
this
no.
I'm
is
so
not
glad I was still here for that.
That's the fucking intermission.
That was perfect.
Did they get? I'm lagging, unfortunately. Did they
This
get
is
removed successfully or not?
Fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, one of them
Ooh.
is still here. Jose.
Okay,
Miguel.
there we go. There we go. Sorry about that. They're gone now. That was, I think, a fitting epilogue to the last
It
piece.
so was. It so was.
That was great. Perfect timing.
Speaking of pipes. Yeah. All right, but again, like, thank you so much for having us all on.
Yeah.
And,
Thank you, man.
I'm sure-
And I will keep oh, look at that. Wow, we've got a few in here tonight. So
Sweet.
I will keep the Zoom room. The Zoom room will be open if you get free later and you'd like to come back. Okay.
That's awesome.
Anyway,
Yeah,
I
if I
think
can,
they're
I
all
will.
God now. I think they are all God now.
Thank you, William. Thank you, Rudy.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Justin Lutz is up next.
Thank you. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Rudy. Like Evan said, appreciate you having us here. We do this every week anyway to ourselves in a vacuum, so it's really cool to have people hear this. So I'm going to read from a zine called ACAB Includes Animal Control. So I'm going to read chapter 2. You don't really need to know anything leading into it other than a fellow whose name is Chowder found a weird creature under a bridge. Tracy punches the chore wheel, soapy water leaking over the dry erase surface and causing the words written there to run. I hate this fucking thing, Brent, she says, scowling over her shoulder at her roommate. Brent is slumped in a kitchen chair, shirt and tie undone to reveal his neck rot t-shirt beneath. A beer sweats in his hand, 4 empty bottles surrounding it on the table. It sucks and it's childish, but we tried the honor system, just cleaning up after ourselves, and that didn't work either, so I don't know what you want me to do. He takes a long sip of beer, his eyes never leaving Tracy. What I want you to do, Tracy says, raising her soapy finger to jab at a space on the wheel marked dishes, is make sure when someone's listed on the goddamn thing that they're here and they're the one doing the chore. What, you want rules now? Order? Authority? Brent smiles behind the neck of the beer and knows he's needling her. Fuck you, Brent, Tracy says, wet middle finger in the air. We don't get to respin the wheel of misfortune just because Chowder decided he wasn't going to fucking be here. It's bullshit. She reaches to an ashtray on the counter, picks up a joint, grimaces when the soap from her fingers meets her lips, but takes a deep pull anyway, the acrid smoke filling the small kitchen. Like, I don't mind doing the dishes. I genuinely don't, but if we're trying to build a microcosm of some utopian society shit here, where everyone pulls their weight, well, Chowder isn't... Whatever Chowder isn't, she doesn't get to say because the front door bursts open and he flies through it, shouting something incomprehensible from the next room. Brent and Tracy share a look, both of them wanting Chowder to be there to complete his chores, but now instantly regretting that wish, as if their desire for him to do menial house labor has manifested him in the form of a whirling dervish. Hey, Tracy shouts, get in here, dickhead. It's your turn to do the dishes. They hear Chowder drop his bike wheel against the wall in the hallway with the others, and then he's in the kitchen, messenger bag slung backwards so it rests on his stomach, a wild grin on his face that makes Tracy wonder if he's finally found the drug to turn his head into the eggs from that 80s commercial. She looks, sees no yolk dripping from his ears. Where have you been, man? She says, gesturing with the joint at the runny chore wheel. You agreed to this thing too, you know, dumb as it might be. At the table, Brent scowls behind his beer. Guys, check this out, Chowder says, and Tracy wonders what trash he's carted back to the house, what drug-fueled refuse he thinks he's rescued from a life under the bridge. But then he pulls open the lip of the messenger bag, and a rodent pops its filthy head out of it. Tracy jumps back, soap flying from her hands and the joint landing in the sink with a sizzle. Dude, what the fuck? You can't bring a raccoon into the house. Yeah, get that thing out of here, Brent says, standing. If it let you pick it up, it probably is fucking rabies. Guys, chill, please, fuck, Chowder says, patting the air with his hands. He smiles so wide that it splits his face. He reaches into the bag and pulls the thing out, and Tracy can see that it's not a raccoon, not a possum, not a vole. It's not anything she's ever seen before because the thing has 6 legs, and its fur seems to be endless, a whispering, wavy pattern that briefly hypnotizes her before she is snapped back to what she's seeing and stands shaking her head in shock. What? Brent starts. The fuck is that thing, Jake? Brent never calls him Jake. None of them do, and that puts a sobering tone over the whole bizarre affair. Dude, I don't actually know, Chowder says. He cradles one arm so the thing can lay back in it, its 6 tiny limbs reaching into the air. The mouth that completely splits its head opens and shuts like miming speech, and Brent sees a massive hulk of a tongue dancing around behind rows of vicious-looking teeth. It was under the bridge. It crawled out from the trash, man. Without the visual evidence, Tracy never would have believed this story. Would have said Chowder was high and thinking high thoughts, hallucinating extra limbs on a big rat or other rodent, but denying the existence of whatever the thing is proves impossible. It scared the shit out of me, and I fell, and I think I broke my wrist. Chowder holds out his wrist for proof, the joint still a little swollen and discolored. He doesn't think he should tell them about the fisherman. Not yet. Knows that Brent will never let him keep the creature in the house if he knows it's a murderer. Instead, he moves his wrist in full rotations, movements Tracy knows he wouldn't be capable of if it was actually broken. This little guy, though, he crawled out and put my hand in his mouth, and it's good as new. Little guy? How do you know it's a he? Brent takes a tentative step towards Chowder, his beer held out in front of him like a weapon. Well, Chowder says, there's this. He reaches to the thing's belly and pulls up a flap of skin, and 2 proboscis lop out, gruesome mirrors of the tongue lolling around in its mouth, and Brent can see that they're twin penises, probing members that dance and wriggle in the air as if they have spines inside of them. I felt him wriggling around in my bag when he biked over here. Brent leans back instinctually to avoid the waving members, despite being feet from them. Jesus fucking Christ, he says. He takes off his taped together glasses and rubs the bridge of his nose. We have to fucking call someone. Like fuck we do, Chowder says, hugging the thing closer. Anyway, who are we going to call? We should call the cops or something. The cops, Tracy? Really? What? You have ACAB tattooed on your knuckles. Tracy looks down, sheepish, but her phone is in her hand, the dial screen pulled up. All right, we'll call animal control. ACAB includes animal control. Tracy stands defeated, rocking on the balls of her feet, phone still in hand. Tentative, cautious, she thumbs the button to darken the screen, slides it back into the pocket of her ratty jean shorts. Fuck, dude, Brent says, rubbing the bridge of his nose. You can't expect to keep that thing in here. The lease says no pets. Chowder strokes the top of the creature's head and its mouth drops open, tongue lolling out in contentment. I mean, if you want me to ride back to the bridge and dump this little guy out into the mud and trash, I guess I can do that. You're such an asshole, Brent sighs. You really found him under the bridge? Under trash? Chowder nods, trying not to be too enthusiastic about this gained ground. If Brent is asking questions, then he's caving, his resolve crumbling and falling away. I saw an old microwave moving. I thought a raccoon or something might be trapped under it, so I moved it and this little guy popped out. He just let you pick him up? Tracy is fishing a new joint out of a pants pocket, lighting it with a paper match. It took a little coaxing, sure, Chowder lies. He's painting the fiction as it goes, creating the best possible scenario, the best selling points to convince them to let the creature stay with them, to let him keep him. The thing fixed his hand, protected him, killed for him. I don't know, man, Brent says, taking a tentative step forward. Maybe we should still call animal control, someone. Brent gestures with his beer hand, finger extended to point. That thing could be a new species, could be some weird mutation from leaked chemicals, could be. The creature opens its mouth and the giant tongue lashes out like a whip, curls around Brent's beer bottle and pulls it into its mouth. All 3 roommates stare at the creature, its mouth crunching up and down on the glass, tinkling sounds coming from behind its closed lips. Holy fuck, Tracy says. She takes a massive pull in the joint, holds it. He must be hungry, Chowder says, laughing. He's nervous. Doesn't want this to be what gets the thing kicked out of the house. Doesn't want either of his roommates to egg it into violence. What do you even eat, little guy? Jesus Christ, Brent says, his fingers still curled in the bottle holding position. Jake, if that thing hurts any of us, it's fucking gone, man. Okay, he won't. He's pretty harmless, Chowder says, thinking of the teeth, the fisherman, the pile of gore still slopped on the bank of the Ransom River. I don't fucking believe that, personally, Brent says, crossing to the fridge to fish out a new beer. But I'm not going to kick an innocent creature out into the street. Tracy blows smoke, her eyes wide, her head shaking. You guys are fucking mental. This is essentially a feral monster, something no one's ever seen before, and naive as fuck Chowder and bleeding heart vegan Brent are gonna invite it into our fucking house. She points toward Brent with smoldering joint. You mentioned that it could be a mutation, the result of some chemical spill or some shit. That means someone is out there looking for this guy. I hate saying this guy and creature, Brent says. Can we name this thing? Tracy rolls her eyes. I was thinking Iggy, Chowder says. Ha, Tracy laughs. That's fucking perfect. He's a wild animal and you're his fucking stooge. She goes to the fridge, fishes out one of Brent's beers, and cracks the cap with her teeth. But seriously, if this guy, Iggy, excuse me, is some sort of science experiment, there are going to be some people coming after him, looking for him. Haven't any of you seen a fucking movie? There might even be reward money. We could actually get ahead on the rent. No, Chowder shouts, and both Brent and Tracy stiffen. No, sorry, no. Iggy saved my fucking life, okay? I can't take him back under the bridge to live in trash, and I can't turn him over to some fascist pig doctors that are just gonna poke and prod and dissect him. He's a living fucking thing, and he's my friend, goddammit. Like he hears this, Iggy reaches out his probing tongue and licks the side of Chowder's face. Chowder smiles, but his jaw is set. I'll figure it out, okay? I promise it won't affect anything. He'll live in my room. He can come with me to work. No one will even know he's here. Well, that's just not realistic. I'm not telling you to hide him, Brent says. Chowder shrugs. I'm just saying, and the moment he becomes a problem, any problem at all, he makes eye contact with Brent, waits a beat, turns to Tracy. I'll take care of it. With both of them staring, Chowder grabs 2 beers from the fridge and walks upstairs, Iggy still in his messenger bag. Thanks.
Justin, this is a fantastic concept. I love this concept. Like, it's such a good idea. Like, this punk house full of anarchists adopting this weird creature, and the way that dynamic plays out in your story from what you've read of it, I just is just perfect. It's just a perfect execution. You get a great sense of each one of the characters who occupy this space. And I love the tenuousness about accepting this thing. Like, the common sense thing is this thing probably shouldn't be in the house, right? But ideology gets in the way, and that line, "in cab includes animal control," is
Thank you.
that's fucking genius. It's fucking genius. It's hilarious because you get this dynamic. You understand this dynamic immediately, and you know that because this dynamic can't be resolved easily. This is headed towards a bad place real fast. And yeah, no, this is amazing, man. This is very funny, and the way you describe the creature is so alien, but yet so identifiable. It's not
Oh, yeah.
some eldritch horror or something. It's not abstract. You can visualize this creature. You can see the way in which someone could find it cute even as it's really terrifying. So it's wonderful stuff, Justin. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, man. um Michael is up next.
That's me.
Hey,
All right.
Michael, how's it going?
Good, good. I'll be reading from my unpublished novel, The Winnowing Draw, tonight. There is, however, a published collection of 4 short stories that exist in the same world that is now available from Castaigne. So, plug to that. Anyway.
If you can drop the link after you're done, Rudy will tweet it out.
Okay.
The link to the short collection.
Awesome. All right. So this is kind of from the middle of the book. So I guess there's a lot of different stuff going on in this book, but one of the elements is there's this General Custer type dude who's on a crusade to wipe out all the cryptids in America, and Flowers for Hair is his native guide. This is 1880. Chapter 19, Death from Above. I'll ask you again, what good are you to me if in your company I can ride my men into a goddamned ambush? Audie's muscles twitched with unrelieved frustration. Flowers for Hair sat across from him, her tent too close to contain the violence that begged for an outlet, for an excuse. The Lechuza is a wanderer. There are some whose place is known, whose ways are known. I have only heard whispers of this thing. None have heard more. There was fire behind her eyes. She wanted to say more, and Audie would have been grateful for the pretext. He'd never hit a woman before, not even a native, but when he thought of the boys he lost, there were 5, well, 4, and a 5th unlikely to make it. He'd been burnt nearly to a crisp, smelled like burning hair, and worse, most of the skin had come off his feet when they pulled him out of his smoking boots. Summerfield, that was his name. He thought about the letters he would write for him and for the others. Why don't you have some tea? I don't want your damn tea. I need a clear head. He did want the tea, wanted the opiate balm of certainty that rode across his mind and his skin like a warm bath. He wanted other things. Staring at her face, the flowers, the place where her crossed legs emerged from her skirt, liminal. He wanted things he didn't dare to name. She loathed him, he knew it, knew deep down that she would undermine him if she could, if it were on the sly so none could be certain it was her. She would sabotage him, his campaign, without a second thought. But she must know, too, her safety was a tenuous thing, and he the only one holding the men back from treating her the way they would any hostile. She began grinding her herbs, lay a few more twigs on her tiny fire. The sound of stone on stone and the occasional crackle was hypnotic. The kettle popped and sizzled, already rested near the flame. Shiny copper, anachronistic to the rest of her spread. Fine. The day can't get any worse. Make me some of your brew. He watched her delicate movements. As his mind relaxed, the events of the night rolled slowly in, a dismal tide. When they had spotted the great owl, the men had at first mistaken its size, thinking it was much closer than it actually was. A few of them took shots at it with pistols, but they were far off the mark. He'd been lost in thought, just having stopped to make camp, and in the dusk, at first he didn't see what the commotion was about. It was an army on the move, and gunfire was routine. Summerfield had been the first to raise a rifle, and Audie finally saw the bird as it careened from the impact of the bullet in its wing. But instead of crashing to the ground or trying to escape, it had recovered its trajectory and made for the private. He must have been shocked by its aggression so that he never took a second shot, instead flinching and ducking away. As the bird came closer, its actual size was monstrous. Its body was larger than a grown man, its wings near the size of wagons. It dove toward the boy, and as it nearly touched him and then swept to the left, a great flash of blinding light obscured the two of them. For a moment, he thought he saw through the man's skin. Audie felt the hairs stand up on his arms, a deafening buzz ripped through the air, and his ears popped. When he got his sight back, black spots dotted his field of vision. The smoke rising off the boy was clear enough, as was the fit he was throwing on the ground. His legs bounced and kicked, and his head was jerking to and fro. Most of the men nearby had been too shocked to react, and Audie immediately drew his pistol and ran it dry. He saw just one puff come out the thing's back, 1 hit out of 6. Sullivan had come up beside him by then and was doing more precise work with his lever action, but the monster had soon disappeared into the darkening sky. They looked at one another, and without a word, both began reloading, Audie quickly running his empties out and pressing fresh rounds through the loading gate of his revolver, and Sullivan topping off the Winchester. There was a general uproar as a panic spread through the unit, and as them that were nearby tried to give aid to the fallen man or crowded around him with arms at the ready. Screams rang out on the other side of camp. Sullivan broke into a dead run, and Audie followed him. They found a man with his throat ripped wide open, helplessly pawing, then clutching, trying to contain the blood that was emptying out of him in great spurts. There was another with his guts spilled on the grass, already gone pale and still. Tighten the men up. Sullivan nodded in understanding and began shouting orders. Audie ran for one of the wagons. He had only used the Hotchkiss once and was grateful to find the guns loaded and ready. He drew aside the tarp and waited. In a moment, there were more screams. He leveled the gun in the direction of the sound and let loose before he even looked. The sound was numbing. It beat all thought from his head, and it took all his effort to direct his attention to the task. He had caught the creature in the wing, and this time, when it momentarily slowed, he was able to adjust the aim of the big gun and could see dark, arcing jets come out the back of it. Finally, the thing fell to earth. It's very bad luck, this thing you did. The smell of the tea and the sound of her voice brought him back, and he found the little cup already steaming in front of him. Flowers for Hair sat, not quite staring, not looking away either. She was looking beyond him, through him. You should be more concerned with what I might do next. The Lechuza, she ignored his threat, or else didn't hear it. The great bird is a mystery. It is said she can mark you. Those who have seen it and walked away, none of them stay on the middle road. It is a blessing or a curse. Killing one, She nodded and spat. It must be very bad for you. He blew over the edge of the cup, took a drink. He didn't want to lose control, fought to ease himself back from the red place, the great flame of him. Looking at her, easing back from the urge to hurt and to maim, he felt right at the edge of something else, something more dangerous than the tea, maybe more dangerous than giant owls that threw lightning bolts. Flowers for Hair stood. Unlike him, she was small enough to stand erect in the tent, and her skirt flapped gently as she moved, eye level and very close. Her smell was more intoxicating than the tea at this distance. He grabbed her hips and pulled her closer. She didn't resist. He could see her face. In his mind, her expression shifted into a little smile. His forehead rested on the slight round of her belly. He licked the place below her navel, salty and sweet, untouched by the road dust. Here was the ineffable thing he forever sought, its beauty and its strength. Pulling open her skirt, he took her into his mouth. His heart beat heavy as a blacksmith's hammer on an anvil, and he felt a sort of panic, a feeling uncommon to him, strange tension. He trembled, gripped her hip with his left hand, felt himself stiffen. He didn't know what to do, and the terror was another kind of intoxicating. As he felt her grow inside him, he was delivered to a place beyond thought, of musk and violent grace. He began stroking her with his free hand, taking the length of her in and out of his mouth. She tensed, and he tightened his hold on her hip. With each stroke, he pulled her more tightly against him. He wanted to drown in her, to suffocate. The air between them was a sin that dwarfed any he was committing. Time slipped, immeasurable, shapeless, and meaningless, whether from the magic of the tea or their union. The tea was for sure working on him some. He could taste colors on her, the orange of morning sun on the bluffs, the reds that limned the clouds in the evenings. He let go with his right hand and began stroking himself through the heavy fabric of his trousers. It was only a matter of seconds when he spasmed and the warm jet spattered his leg. She came soon after. It caught him by surprise, and he choked and coughed. He couldn't help but swallow most of what came out of her. He spit the rest on the ground, wiped his mouth on his sleeve. She stood quietly for a moment. When he leaned his cheek against her thigh, felt the sweat of it sticky against his head, she withdrew and returned to her seat. Her eyes were a silent judgment, a tangible shift in the power between them. She held in this intimacy a thing that could undo him. He waited for her to speak, a long and pregnant moment. She gave nothing but that vacant stare. Clarity was ice cold, as sticky as that mess in his pants. He felt his face go red and ducked out of the tent without another word. Most of the men were distracted, caring for the wounded boy and the dead and each other. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Sullivan, caught his expression shift when Audie didn't turn to acknowledge him. He moved as quick as he could to his tent and pretended to fall quickly to sleep, lest someone come to call. Sleep was delayed and fitful that night. Mostly he stared at the dark canvas and the thin moonlight it permitted until early the next morning, when he drifted in and out of dreams, stiff and breathless. Thank you.
Michael, you had me at General Custer Hunt's cryptids. I love the way you've executed on that, because there you have such a real sense of like history here. Like, you really have a very strong grasp of this moment in actual history, which is good because you kind of have to have that when you start layering on the genre elements, the sci-fi elements. And I love what you've done here, because all of the battle scenes and stuff, you have a real great understanding of the weaponry used, and the fact that it's being used against these just wild, like otherworldly creatures. It's so wonderful. And I also really dig the fact that you are deep inside your narrator's head. I think with pulpier stuff, sometimes there's a real desire to be like aloof and detached and just get to the battle scenes, get to the action. But you have a real sense for this character's pathology, for like what it would be like to be a General Custer-esque kind of military man, with all the prejudices that come with that, and with all the like weird paranoid ideas that come with that, and to be out in the doing this totally weird and alien thing, hunting these creatures that are a kind of wild game, but a very wild kind of wild game. It's really really hypnotic, really effective stuff, man. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thank you. So is Edwin here or not? If not, that's totally fine, but I don't want to skip over him if he's here.
He does not appear to be, and he didn't text me back, so carry on.
Okay, cool. So then O is up next, and O is closing out the night unless Edwin shows up in the meantime.
All right, so we're still holding out for Edwin headliner. I have a quick question
Yeah.
for the group chat or anybody else who feels like answering. I was going to read something from the short story collection that I published on Castaigne, which is the Lurking Transmission publishing house. It was originally going to be some sort of loosey-goosey prose, but based on the temperature of, everything else that's been read, I was wondering if people would prefer something a bit more narrative, because I got something in here for that too.
Well, let's see. What does the chat say?
Chat, sound off.
Personally, I'm always the more experimental, the better is where I usually stand. But I want to
Yeah,
go
get fucking weird with it.
All right, weird it is. We're gonna stick with what I was gonna read. So this is Chemical Bond, and as some of you know, they're all illustrated by Rachel and Soren Haxan. So I'm just gonna see if everybody can see the illustration that it comes with. All right, so here we go. I originally read this at the Witchcraft Mag reading in Glasgow in October. So hypersexual trauma victims have come to Jesus moments on the strap. They burst into tears during waves of catharsis and project whatever parental figure hurt them most onto her. It made her feel strong to be seen as nothing but a giant amorphous figure, the stud in a porno while hurt bottoms cried themselves to orgasm. Didn't even get mad when they told her to leave. No eye contact, no kiss. Resetting their boundaries with replacement daddy was the price of admission. She got to push their faces into the pillow, and they got to emerge as tear-stained and proud as a love letter and order her out. 2. The sweat in the short, spiky hairs of a scalp rolled down the back of the neck as they deep-throated her. She could feel their throat contract and spasm around the rod crammed down their throat. Every cough stuttered against her groin. Their face was red and their eyes were puffy and watering, almost like they were going to throw up, but they kept sliding down the rod anyway like they had a job to do. 3. Bottoms are the best flirts. They run a finger over your arm and they tell you about the stars, the 3 seasons Jung predicted, how Capricorn is ending and Aquarius is beginning. I'm a Taurus. When does that age start? No. Not every sign gets an age. Maybe humanity is just too young. 4. Get a bigger dick. Compensate a little. You've earned it. Life is hard and full of curves, but if you buy a bigger strap, you might get stuck on a corner. I've got the brain disease that makes me think hot people are smaller than me. They're usually not, but if I can fit a waist or a shoulder or a wrist in my hand, it's like some sign that I'm supposed to go for it. Maybe it's a mutual, subconscious, physical signal. Like if they let me grab them, they're showing interest. Girl bends down to kiss me, but when both hands go on waist, brain says little. Like a Napoleonic complex, but Freudian, complex sexual ritual. 5. The conviction of liking something bravely is a sign of fear. Broad-chested, deep-voiced, big manly men deserve poetry too. They're not cherished in Twitter rants by straight women who talk mostly about being unafraid. They deserve better. They're more than a coward's fetish. They deserve to be made more naked than they have ever been, stripped of their emotional barriers. They deserve a moment's rest from the burden of carrying others. The knots in their back should be broken. They should not just be bare, but raw. Glassy, distant, barrel-chested men slowly returning to their bodies after they reach a place they never knew was available to them. I know a guy who's a fucking coward. He goes along with whatever his friends say. He improves himself by improving his social circle. He's cute, though. I wonder what I could make him agree to. Guys who talk up being psychos have no imagination. They just want to rabbit fuck. Psycho guys are so vanilla. Psycho guys talk about instincts and urges, and they get confused and afraid when they don't enter fugue states. Never went rabbit in a fight, never disconnected during sex. Totally normal dude, staring at his reflection in the mirror with tears in his eyes, wondering why he's not psycho. They read blogs that talk about hormones and nutrition, but nothing makes them disconnect. Nothing frees them from the burden of their own thoughts, and for all their bravado about destroying social norms, nothing would ever make them transgress their own self-image. 6. For a while she orbited a cute witch, circling her many transparent skirts and scarves, her large black hat, approving of all her tattoos and the heavy bags under her eyes. When she got close, the witch parted some of her fabrics and revealed the mania underneath, the cobwebs of synchronicity tying her in a knot. Self-cocooned, she explained that she held on to herself because everyone else was trying to drain her. Casual encounters in the street and at work knocked down her hit points all day. At night, she wrapped herself in blankets and tried to recover. She poured the leftovers into her craft, little thimblefuls of pure mana into the open cauldron of her art. Every conversation she had made it that much harder for her to get a good cupful. And when the pot was full, she poured it out for everyone. 7. Girl in Crocs and no bra came into the deli for a bagel. She scratched, unself-conscious, and the bare length of her spine was revealed for an instant. God, I love that unaware self-possession, so naked and refined. No makeup, hair and messy, practiced grace. Cute, tall, slim girl at the cafe in a soft, see-through gray shirt, the bars of her nipple piercings accentuating her tiny little upturned breast. I want to bite them. The revealed pectoral muscle of a flat chest underneath the protruding tender breast. 8. Pretty little alt boys with doe eyes and no fear. I'm gonna knock you over. Just let me. Let me grab you and shake you, and we'll talk about it later. You can be Peter Steele with someone else. Tonight you're Roz Williams. Fine. You can be Iggy Pop. But I want to be David Bowie. No need to change. That faded old band t-shirt has just as many holes as lingerie. Keep all your heraldic symbols on, stolen and pawned from other generations. And in pantomime, we are ourselves in the bigger shadows cast on the wall of the cave. The ceremonial ritual of secular self-destruction. Die a little death. Put my hands around your throat. What number is this? I can't read. 9. When she is drunk, she wants me to kill her. She asks me to smother her or dig my fingers in her windpipe. She says she doesn't want to die alone. She says she'd prefer if I did it than cancer or a car. She wants me to be there as she goes. She asks if we can jump off the hospice roof when we get old together. She wants to hold my hand on the way down. She likes it when I protect her. She says she feels safe around me. If I tell off a guy, she kisses me on the way home and tells me she loves it when I do that. She asked me to get bigger so I can do it to more guys. She asked me to be her worst nightmare. Thank you.
Oh, that was fucking rad. That was so good.
Hell yeah.
I love this because this is like a series of really perfect little character studies. And each one has like real psychological depth and insight, in spite of the fact that each one is so concise. My favorite one is the Psycho Guys one. That the final the nothing would ever make them transgress their own self-image is such a good fucking line. And everything I could intimately understand exactly the kind of guy you were describing in that piece, and exactly the way in which we could, I've seen this before, that like particular kind of edgelord who is so like pompous and like obsessed with their edgelord dumb that they like that they're not transgressive at all, because they won't, like, in order to really transgress you have to break yourself and remake yourself, break yourself and remake yourself, and have that kind of like self-awareness. And the way you put it there are so many like really amazing single lines in this piece too. The keep all your heraldic symbols on is so good, so good. This is just like a series of really amazing pithy lines woven into these really clear, vivid psychological character studies. It's just it's very good. Oh, it's very fucking good. Thanks,
Will.
Um, so I do not think that Edwin is here. I didn't let anyone new in. So if he's here, it's some magic shit. So in that case, I think we're gonna end the show there, but I'm gonna do what I always do, which is after we stop recording, I'm gonna keep the Zoom room open and people can hang out if they want, and just socialize or whatever for however long they want to. But yeah, thank you everyone who read tonight. There was some fucking wild shit read tonight. Some really amazing stuff. I hope some of you will come back someday to Misery Tourism. Misery Loves Company. We do that every Friday night at the same time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. And just like tonight, we tweet out the link to that from our Twitter account at Misery Tourism. Anyway, this has been a fucking amazing night. Thank you to everyone who's read. Um, Thank you to O for helping to organize this. And thank you to Evan, I guess, for putting together this awesome group too. So yeah, thank you everyone. And I think we're going to call it there if I can figure out how to stop recording. Here we go. Okay.